Alright guys, so in this video I am going to be discussing a potential renovation to the Twin Towers Plaza that subsequently would have affected the towers and the area surrounding it, and discuss really how this would have potentially changed September 11th, because if you look at it, you see the models, I mean, you can immediately tell, yeah, there's some stuff going on here. So this was a renovation that I discussed previously because, as far as I know, this was the only major renovation that was discussed surrounding the Twin Towers. Now, sure, you could talk about smaller renovations, maybe them thinking about renovating the underground shopping mall, which I think they would have done because it was becoming obsolete really quickly. But in terms of just renovations to where you could see a noticeable difference, like a noticeable change surrounding the towers, this was really the only one, and obviously it didn't happen. This was originally talked about early in the 1990s. In 1992, they wanted to develop potentially a master plan for the redevelopment of the center's public spaces, including the plaza in between both of the Twin Towers and also the Marriott, and kind of that entire complex. You've got 4 World Trade Center, 5 World Trade Center, and 6 World Trade Center, the 8 and 9 story buildings surrounding that as well. And I also think if September 11th had not happened, those 3 buildings that were only 8 or 9 stories tall all would have been renovated to be made look more modern. Now, you really can't renovate the exterior of the Twin Towers. They would look the exact same, but I do think those buildings would have been renovated. And I also think the Twin Towers would be really struggling, especially during the pandemic, in terms of having a lot of vacant office space, because to be honest, in the year 2024, the Twin Towers are completely obsolete. Now, don't get me wrong, they're still extremely unique, but it's just the way they're designed with the lack of natural light coming in. These renderings and these models were officially pitched in the year 1994 to have new plaza structures, adding restaurants and retail space and providing new access to the concourse level below, along with new street level retail spaces along the center's perimeter and a new public park surrounding the complex. And so there were mainly 2 different designs that I could find. And it's important to say that because I don't want to confuse people. The first one, to be honest, if you look at it, it kind of looks like a saw trap, I'm not going to lie. So the idea was to have cables suspended that were supposed to be attached to the Twin Towers. And that's what was going to hold up this, I guess, upper area that was going to keep everyone dry below, because they were going to have stuff underneath it, possibly within the plaza. This development just looks terrible, because imagine you have one of the offices in the Twin Towers and you're looking out and you just see these cables, like this massive cable system hanging down, and that is not a forgiving. It's not really a net system. It might be like metal there at the bottom, like that ceiling, but that's not forgiving. So when it comes to like jumping into that, it would not be a good situation, let's just say that. So obviously, in terms of September 11th, if that was there, yeah, it would not, let's just say it would not be a pretty sight. And then you had the other development that I think was slightly more realistic, but still kind of just looked out of place. I mean, the plaza should be open, and you can see the potential development. It's more of a glass design. It's really toned down. There's no massive cables hanging from anywhere, but that would be another situation where I do think, I mean, if there's that building in the middle of the Twin Towers, obviously that would have changed September 11th in a few different ways, just when it comes to accessing both of the buildings possibly falling on top of that glass structure, along with, if you were to jump out, there's the possibility you could hit something like that, and obviously that would be terrible. There's really no way to survive a situation like that. So another thing to add when it comes to this renovation you're looking at right now, the one that I would say is at least passable because there's no cables or anything like that, it does seem like there's some type of underground connection and you could possibly reach the underground shopping mall. I believe that's what this mainly is for, and also maybe some other built-up shops within that glass structure. That's what I would assume that is. You can see there on the right, it looks like possibly some type of, I don't know, some restaurant or some area, but that, it's just so close to the towers, it doesn't look good. It just looks out of place in terms of not having a plaza there and trying to have a building right next to the Tridents. It really doesn't fit. When it comes to like the plaza area, these just didn't make a lot of sense. It seems like they were trying too hard with these renovations, and obviously neither of them happened. This was in the mid 1990s. Yes, there were talks of potentially renovating the surrounding area of the Twin Towers complex in like the year 2000, but I have heard people say, oh, they were going to do this huge renovation. I really don't think that's true. I mean, they might have done a few things. I think they would have changed the underground shopping mall. But in terms of the Twin Towers, they're pretty much just the Twin Towers. I mean, obviously the idea of attaching a massive cable system to them and what that would have resulted in terms of September 11th, I mean, those cables are very unforgiving and it would, not be good. So, obviously that renovation never happened. It would have been very ugly. I do think at some point they would have renovated the smaller World Trade Center buildings. And then obviously I'm thinking about doing another video talking about buildings that only exist because of 9/11. So it'd basically be like the Freedom Tower, the other new buildings surrounding it, the new mall that they have. Although maybe they would have built that anyways, because I just can't see the underground shopping mall lasting too long. And they were already talking about potentially taking that out. So that was the renovation that never happened. And obviously, guys, to a light degree, it would have changed September 11th. If this renovation was in place, to be honest, it would have made it a lot more gory, if you know what I'm saying, because those nets, they're not forgiving, the cable is not forgiving, and it would not be a pretty sight if that cable system and whatever that top structure is. It does, in some of the renderings, or none of these are renderings, actually, they're all just, drawings of what it could potentially look like, because this was the 90s. But in some of the drawings, it does look like it's potentially a netting. In other drawings, it looks like, I don't know, some type of metal structure that's suspended with the Twin Towers. The reason they did that, I mean, you have to wonder. It's extremely ugly. Why do that? Mainly because they didn't want disruption at the base of the tower in terms of supports and walls. So like the plaza area, they wanted to be totally open. It's kind of, the same thing as the open floor plan with the Twin Towers, where the core is local into the center, and you could look one side of the floor to the other and not have any disruption in terms of walls. And that's what they wanted at the bottom. They wanted it to be free in terms of being able to walk anywhere, and there would be, I guess, no walls. And I guess also you could say, well, it can help with the weather, but it's just not practical when you think about it, because there's no way you can get into a car around that plaza area. So I just don't really understand this idea of this renovation. I guess they wanted a public space. It never happened, but it was pitched, and certainly it would not have had a major effect on September 11th, but you can kind of understand if, people were jumping, maybe they would think, well, maybe I could potentially land on that and survive. It would not happen. There's no way. It would just be even more gory. So guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.